I would expect that most of us come to this first Sunday of 2015 steeped in the story of Christmas. What I mean is, if we manage to take time at all for spiritual reflection this crazy season, chances are our scriptural focus led right up to such a rich narrative. There was a little baby born to a peasant teenager in a barn, surrounded by heavenly light and serenaded by angel choirs, the subject of interest from the lowliest of shepherds to the most politically astute kings. It's a good story, no matter how many times you tell it, and 2,000 years later, there's just enough of the miraculous sprinkled with a smattering of intrigue and mixed together with some human interest. And the narrative of Christmas keeps getting served up in our minds over and over again. Well, here we are in the last Sunday of the Christmas season, and it's time to pack up the stable and put away the hay until next year. But who wants to do that? We like the narrative. It's comfortable and it's accessible, and it's something we can all mostly agree on. After all, what's not to like about a newborn baby? Well, if we're thinking like that, we're not alone. This pull to keep the Christmas narrative alive as a central focus of our faith is well documented. Think, for example, of that immortal cinematic masterpiece, Talladega Nights, in which Will Ferrell begins his prayer before dinner with the words, "Dear 8-pound, 6-ounce newborn infant Jesus, don't even know a word yet, just a little infant so cuddly but so omnipotent," only to be interrupted by protesting family members wondering why he's praying to baby Jesus. He continues, "I like the Christmas Jesus best, and I'm the one saying grace. So, dear tiny Jesus with your golden fleece diapers, with your tiny fat balled up fist." Yes, we love that Christmas Jesus. But wait. Our gospel lesson this morning comes from the fourth gospel, the Gospel of John, which begins not like the other three, with angels and swaddling clothes. Instead, John launches right into a mysterious cosmic treatise about the nature of God. Words which you and I have come to know by heart, but which not many of us would readily turn to for a holiday spiritual reflection. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. Rather than planting us right in the middle of human history in a dusty little Middle Eastern town 2,000 years ago, John creates for us a treatise about the timeless nature of the baby who was God with us. John does this, I suspect, because he knew that we'd have a tendency to get stuck in the story. It's a fun story to tell, it's lovely to imagine, and it's so cute to act out. He knows, of course, that you and I need to mark time to recognize a point in human history at which God intersects our lives. But John wants us to remember even more than that God is never bound by time and space. And while we mark the coming of God with us on a starry night 2,000 years ago, we must remember that God has always been and ever will be at work in the world, long before and ever since that night Jesus was born to live a human life. This lofty idea, of course, is good for us to remember this first Sunday of a new year. While God understands our need for new beginnings, we must remember that there's something timeless and eternal about the nature of God. God with us as an ancient Middle Eastern carpenter is a narrative that gives us hope. But Christmas is over. It's a new year. And we have to figure out how it is that we will tell the narrative of God with us after the baby grows up and our lives move on. And perhaps that's why John began with his dramatic essay of an eternal God, because John would want us to remember that God was long before that manger held his human form, and God is now and ever will be here among us, constantly offering us relationship and transformation, new beginnings and fresh possibilities. God with us. John's words, "He was in the world, and the world was made through him, and the world did not know him." The true message of hope we tell every Christmas is that God has not given up on us, and that the light that was in the beginning and that broke through the darkness in Bethlehem 2,000 years ago is still shining today. How very sad it would be for us humans who are so often stuck in our own limited understanding of time and space to keep God as a newborn infant in an ancient story, totally irrelevant to our lives here and now, other than a great excuse to go out in public in our bathrobes. No, I suspect we're here after Christmas because we must be hoping in some way or another that God is still at work all around us. And the writer of John's gospel would agree. He did say that our task now is to pay attention, to look for the light, to hope that somehow we will be people who will know him when we see him. In January of 2007, wearing a baseball cap and jeans, Joshua Bell, a then 40-year-old one-time child prodigy who commands enthralled audiences who pack the world's most prestigious concert halls, paying hundreds of dollars for seats to hear him play his violin, stood against a wall next to a garbage can in Washington, D.C.'s L'Enfant Plaza metro station. He'd agreed with the staff of the Washington Post to try an experiment where he would play a 45-minute concert on his $3.5 million Stradivarius violin during rush hour, propping his case open with a few coins to seed the pot just to see what would happen. He started his concert with a little bit of Bach, and then he went on to Schubert's Ave Maria, and he kept going for the whole 45 minutes, during which a videotape recorded 1,097 people walking past him. You can watch the video online, and you can see that for the entire 45 minutes, he never attracted a gathered crowd. People were rushing too fast to get wherever they were headed, and no one stopped to listen. At the end of his agreed-upon 45 minutes, Bell had collected a total of $32, including the seed money he'd thrown in at the beginning. And all in all, only one person of the 1,097 people who passed by Joshua Bell in the L'Enfant Plaza metro station that morning recognized him. Stacy Furukawa, a demographer at the Commerce Department, had been in the audience 3 weeks before when Joshua Bell had played at the Library of Congress. And after hearing him in the metro, she said to a reporter later, "This is the most astonishing thing I have ever seen in Washington." She said Joshua Bell was standing in the metro station playing at rush hour, and people were not stopping. They weren't even looking. And some were flipping quarters at him. Quarters! I wouldn't do that to anybody. I was thinking, oh my gosh, what kind of city do I live in that this could happen? What kind of world do we live in, I wonder, in which we miss altogether the hints of light and hope that remind us that we are not here on our own, that the very presence of divine God, who was in the beginning and who will be into all of eternity, is here right now with us. Because Christmas is just another nice cultural tradition, unless we become people whose lives are marked by careful attention to the miraculous in and all around us. The Christmas story is a nice one to tell, but a new year has begun and Christmas won't roll around again for a while. Today, the Gospel of John invites us to remember the Christmas story against its cosmic backdrop. If we do that, chances are we'll train our eyes to squint through the darkness around us, looking as carefully as we can for any hint of that light John describes. And if we begin a new year resolved to look for God with us, I guarantee we'll begin to see God at work even in the most unlikely places, even in us. Amen.